Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone joining. Welcome to another live session at the Reactor. This session is part of the SaaS Academy series. My name is Rav and I'm the Program Manager at Reactor London. Before we get into the session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, and be kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Today's session is on scaling your SaaS application with DevOps and is led by Dave. And with that, I will now hand over to Pablo from UK Azure Business Group, who will introduce the SaaS Academy Tech Track. Welcome, Pablo.
Thanks so much, Rav, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching from. I'm Pablo Casabon from the UK Azure Business Group, and I focus on the unmanaged SMB segment. So I'll present our speaker, but before that, I'll talk about what SaaS Academy is about. SaaS Academy was actually inspired by our CEO's vision that every company is becoming a software company. So this is your chance to dive into the latest Microsoft tech, learn more about the future of SaaS from Microsoft experts, partners, customers, external advisors, etc., on how to build and scale your SaaS solution, no matter if you're starting or you have been in the SaaS business for a few years. This is a joint program brought to you by both Microsoft Western Europe, Microsoft UK, the Microsoft Reactor, and it's been teamwork to have this project. Special thanks to Doreen Cohen, Irina Costina, Sherry List, Gonzalo Ruiz, James Willard, Rob Cocker, and the whole extended team and our past, present, and future speakers. So before I introduce our distinguished speaker, Dave Burnison from GitHub, who will be addressing how to scale your SaaS application through DevOps, I wanted to share a quick video on SaaS Academy. Rav, over to you.
Did you know that every business will eventually become a software business? Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella not only made that prediction, but also continues to lead Microsoft to SaaSify its portfolio. With SaaS solutions, you can grow your business and make even sophisticated enterprise applications like ERP and CRM affordable if you lack the resources to buy, deploy, and manage your infrastructure and software. So, how to get started with SaaS? That's why we created the Microsoft SaaS Academy. It is your chance to deep dive into the latest Microsoft technologies and learn more about the future of software as a service from Microsoft experts, partners, and customers. Our SaaS Academy was designed with a business track and a tech track to provide companies like yours with the SaaS knowledge that fulfills their needs. Our business track covers the SaaS fundamentals, whether you are a cloud-native company or a traditional software provider, while the tech track addresses technical aspects of building a SaaS solution, including SaaS architecture, DevOps, and sustainable software engineering. You can get started with SaaS in the same time it would take you to build a Microsoft PowerPoint about it. Ready to accelerate your journey to SaaS? Don't miss our upcoming webinars and join the Microsoft SaaS Academy now.
Perfect. So now that we've seen what SaaS Academy is, I'm honored to introduce our speaker. So Dave Burnison is a technical advocate on the GitHub and Azure DevOps team. He's super passionate about DevOps and app modernization and sees himself as a link between the product and the customers. Dave joined Microsoft in January 2016 and currently works at GitHub. And he has spent time as a consultant and in technical sales prior to joining these roles. He has been focused on DevOps the entire time, so you know he is an expert. Dave, so many thanks from tuning in from Seattle. I know it's early for you, but we really appreciate it. So over to you.
You're welcome, Pablo. Absolutely my pleasure to be here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are and when you're watching this. Let's dive in and talk about scaling SaaS applications with DevOps. And we're going to focus on GitHub today. And GitHub is the largest developer platform on earth. There's now over 73 million registered users on GitHub with 4 million organizations, and we see 2.6 billion contributions per year. So things continue to grow. And this is not your father's GitHub anymore. It's not just about source control. It's absolutely a DevOps platform. And when we dig into this a little more, it's used today by some of the most innovative companies in the world: Stripe, Netflix, Shopify, and others. But it's also home of top open source projects. GitHub's really known as the home of open source. So when you look at things like Kubernetes and Docker and GraphQL, they live on GitHub. And now leading global enterprises like Procter & Gamble and 3M and McKesson and SAP and others use GitHub as their home for DevOps. And it's not just a single platform, not just a single application, but really an ecosystem. So being able to tightly integrate with things like Jira or Azure DevOps or HashiCorp for Terraform and HashiCorp Vault and things like that with very tight integration. So we see tremendous support from all of those third parties as well. But we believe the best way for enterprises and startups, companies of any size, to solve for accelerating velocity is to focus on their developer experience. And by creating an experience that empowers your developers to do their best work at work, you're naturally increasing your ability to deliver more innovative and secure software faster. So GitHub offers the flexibility to deploy fully integrated platform in the way that makes sense for your business, in the cloud or on-prem. And it allows companies to automate their development pipeline with actions and packages. You can leverage our hosted runners for actions so that there's really no infrastructure for you to set up. And you can defend your code against vulnerabilities introduced by insecure dependencies or by developer error and bad development patterns. And this accelerates developer collaboration via the GitHub workflow and through groundbreaking tools such as Codespaces, GitHub Mobile, and other things as well. So the first thing we're really going to focus in on is Codespaces. Codespaces, by empowering individuals and teams to rely on their knowledge and experience, and by automating, you're able to optimize at an organization-wide scale. You're now able to focus on eliminating waste across multiple delivery streams and help the business to achieve its goals. Codespaces supports these initiatives without the full investment of building new tools. Each development environment can be tailored to individual team needs. So what this is Visual Studio Code running inside the browser in the context of your repo and project. You can also launch this you can also launch and connect to Codespaces directly from Visual Studio Code. So some of the issues we tried to address were things like, losing a whole day getting a QA engineer running on a project, or those situations where one person says, hey, it works on my laptop, why doesn't it work on yours? Or, now with the chip shortage, developers are asking for more powerful machines, but they're just not there. And I have no idea what I've installed over the years. So I'm not sure I can even replicate my dev environment, for others to do the same debugging and things that I do. And here's some of the quotes that we saw out there in the wild from Facebook and Airbnb and Shopify. Things like Airbnb engineers wrote code on local machines and it synced to the cloud where we ran our services. It was built in-house. Does something like this exist for similar teams? Closest I see is GitHub Codespaces That was in beta as of August last year, as of April last year, and went to general availability back in August. So now Codespaces are available for you. You could even do work on an iPad. You don't have to have a massive, powerful laptop to do development anymore. So Codespaces, code without compromise. You can code, build, test, debug, and deploy with a complete development environment right inside of your browser. You can contribute to repos quickly. So this really reduces the time to set up dev environments from hours per week to a couple of minutes. In fact, Codespaces was in beta for several months, almost a year, if I recall. And all of the flashy, sexy features were there, but we really focused on enterprise scale and performance in that. And now when you launch a Codespace, it'll spin up in about 15 to 20 seconds. So you can onboard new developers very quickly. Or if as a senior developer, you need to jump from project to project, you can jump from project A to project B and not have to worry about the configuration for project B causing problems when you jump back to project A and things like that. And you can extend and customize, configure your editor with dot files and VS Code, Visual Studio Code extensions to create a consistent environment in every Codespace. Again, consistent for project A, it can be different for project B, but it's always going to be consistent every time you go back for that particular project. And developer choice, powered by the web-based version of Visual Studio Code or use with your desktop IDE. And spoiler alert, we're also working on compatibility with JetBrains as well. So it's going beyond Visual Studio Code as well. But like I said, this is fast onboarding with a cloud native experience. You can set up the dot files and devcontainer.json files to provide standardized and consistent environments for everybody working on your project and even across your organization. And it's very secure with audit trails, with clear dev environment access controls from anywhere. And at GitHub, we standardized on using Codespaces, and there's a great blog post there that talks about this. And at GitHub, we've seen 800 developer hours saved per week by using Codespaces. And now once Codespaces were launched, some of the feedback we saw was just tremendous. Michael Benedict from Pinterest said, "We've been experimenting with Codespaces and do anticipate it to be a key component in our goal to enable consistent local development and experience for our engineers." Super excited about this. Jason Smith, I'm not going to lie, the whole my laptop battery lasts 5 times longer was a big part. Switching machines with synced state rocks, no more work in process commits. So the fact that you can do debugging inside of a Codespace and all that compute power is actually running in the cloud and not on your local laptop, means you're not burning up CPU cycles and running down your battery and things like that. And David Siegel has a great quote here. "It took about 4 days for our company to go from GitHub Codespaces probably won't work for us to we never want to develop locally again." And I definitely encourage you to check out David's session from GitHub Universe, and I'll provide a link later on to GitHub Universe. But he had a great session that kind of walked through their adoption of Codespaces and how that's now central to how their developers work and everything. All right, so let's shift gears here a little bit, and I'll walk through a bit of a demo on Codespaces here in a little while. But I first want to cover off some other things that can really help accelerate SaaS environments. And when we talk about deploying code and automating mundane tasks and things like that, we talk about GitHub Actions. And something that came from the 2019 DORA State of DevOps report found, manual tasks are a significant inhibitor to developer productivity. As developers, we want to be writing new code. We don't want to get down in repetitive tasks of doing manual deployments. And of course, if we're doing things manually, it's subject to human error. We're all human. We all make mistakes. But once you give a machine a script, it's going to do the same thing over and over again. So now we have GitHub Actions. You can automate everything with fully integrated CI/CD and over 11,000 open source integrations out there in the marketplace. We have seen tremendous support from companies and the open source community for GitHub Actions. And this enables 1.2 times faster time to merge, because you can set up actions when you create a pull request that run through your unit tests and do the security checks and everything. And so we see 1.3 times more pull requests merged and things like that. And so let's dig into this a little bit. So automating workflows to accelerate delivery through automation. So with GitHub Actions, so for those of you that are familiar with Azure DevOps, the fact that Microsoft acquired GitHub and we're able to collaborate in a huge way between Azure DevOps and GitHub, we were able to take a copy or a fork of the Azure Pipelines code, which is a tremendously strong CI/CD system, bring that over to the GitHub ecosystem. Now, when we initially brought it over, we couldn't just light up all the same features right away, but even from the start, it was a great continuous integration tool. And then we're able to add in things like the multi-stage workflows and have manual approvals prior to releasing to these different environments and everything. So it has become a tremendous continuous delivery tool as well as a great CI tool. But we also took the opportunity to refactor some things with GitHub Actions relative to Azure Pipelines. And in addition to just having triggers for merging into my main branch or committing code to my main branch, creating a pull request, triggering an actions workflow on a schedule or manual trigger, there's actually a couple dozen different triggers out there for GitHub Actions. So now the first time somebody forks a repository, or if somebody answers a question in a GitHub discussion, or if somebody creates or edits an issue in GitHub, I can kick off a GitHub Actions workflow. So I can use this same workflow automation engine for a lot more than just CI/CD. And simple and easy to use based on YAML with a host of sample workflows to get you started. So yeah, when you say you want to create a new workflow, you can sift through the dozens of samples that are out there to get you started. And like I said, thousands of open source actions maintained by the community and by companies offering integrations. GitHub Actions is now the #1 CI/CD tool for the repos that live out there on GitHub. And specifically, when we talk about Azure, the Azure team has provided tremendous support for GitHub Actions. Everything from deploying to Kubernetes and app services to integrating with Key Vault to turning Azure policy into code that you store in GitHub so that as you deploy to a staging environment, you can verify that that staging environment adheres to all of your Azure policies. So you know that everything is meeting all those policy and compliance requirements before you even go to production. And you can shift security and compliance left. I'll talk a little bit about Dependabot and GitHub Advanced Security, but it even goes beyond that. I just talked about policy as code. Also, when you when you deploy a container to Azure Container Registry, you can use an action to scan that container for vulnerabilities and then take those results and report them to Azure Security Center. And operate seamlessly, shift from manual management and operation of IT environments to enable seamless automated IT management that is controllable, collaborative, and repeatable at enterprise scale. And this really helps accelerate developer velocity. And you can not only Azure, but tools like HashiCorp and Red Hat OpenShift and things like that also provide actions out there in the marketplace. So one of the success stories we've seen is Pinterest. Actions allowed Pinterest to build and test and deploy from all GitHub, automating CI/CD and reducing build time from 80 hours to 10 minutes, enabling developers to focus on code contributions. It's a really nice interface, and the CI speed is so much faster. It's been positive for everyone involved. So yeah, there's lots of customer stories out there that talk about the various aspects of GitHub, and you can see how little companies like Pinterest have latched on to those things and been able to grow. All right, next, let's talk about code security. And there are 3 areas here. Securing the usage of open source. So this comes through Dependabot and dependency updates. So as soon as you push code up to GitHub, we're going to look through your manifest files for NPM, NuGet, Maven, etc. See what libraries and packages you're pulling in. Look at what versions you're pulling in. Look at the information in the GitHub advisory database to determine, hey, that version of Bootstrap that you're pulling in, you know what? That has a known security vulnerability. We will alert you to that, but not only will we alert you to that, we'll automatically create a pull request that updates that manifest file to pull in a newer version of that dependency that's known to be free of those vulnerabilities. So now if you're writing new code and that includes adding a new package, you can be alerted to the security vulnerability and fix it before you even merge code into your main branch for the first time. So that's securing that software supply chain. The next area is code scanning. So GitHub acquired a company called Semel that had a product called CodeQL. That QL stands for query language. And what CodeQL does is when you create a pull request, when you merge to your main branch, runs a process that turns the code into data that can be queried. So the CodeQL query language, there's a couple thousand different queries out there, but by default, it focuses on finding some of the highest priority and riskiest security vulnerabilities. Things like SQL injection or cross-site scripting injection, but scans your code for these things and surfaces the results right inside of a pull request. Or what we see here on the screen is I can go up to the organization level and look at the security overview. So I can see the code scanning alerts, the Dependabot alerts, and I'll talk about secret scanning too here in a minute. But I can see all of these results across all of my repos, as well as having this information embedded right into the developer workflow. The third area here is secret scanning, making sure that there's no logins, passwords, personal access tokens, or if you're deploying to something like an Azure web app, making sure that published profile is not hard-coded right inside of your code. And we work with more than 45 different providers. So Azure and Datadog and Jira, and if your app is working with APIs to verify credit cards and things like that, we know what the secrets look like for all of these different providers and can alert you to when we find those secrets in your code. And something that just went into preview, I'd have to double check if it's private or public preview, but the ability to have these secrets even blocked from being committed. So pre-commit hooks for this as well to ensure that you've kept the code out of there. One of the great ways in which secret scanning works, if you're working on a public repo, so an open source repo, if we see that an Azure published profile is published to that public repo, we can reach out to Azure and say, hey, this secret was just exposed. Let's invalidate that secret, force the developers to use a new secret and store that secret in GitHub Secrets or Azure Key Vault or HashiCorp Vault or something like that. But that's ensuring that even though that secret was mistakenly exposed, it can't be used for bad actors to access those things like, Azure Kubernetes, Azure web apps, and things like that. So yeah, you can learn more about all of this at github.com/features/security. Then the next area to mention is planning and tracking. So for a long time, GitHub has had issues and projects, but it's been pretty lightweight compared to things like Jira or Azure Boards and that. But we're reimagining planning and tracking with GitHub now. And we now have in public beta kind of what we refer to as issues vNext. And we're making great strides there in being able to manage issues and add additional fields and manage it either as a table or manage it as a board similar to a Kanban board, but you can define the columns that you want to see there and everything. So yeah, this is, like I say, this is in public beta right now, but lots of work going on there these days. And then kind of one of the last things to touch on here is GitHub for mobile. We have a first-class mobile application for Android and iOS, so that whether you're working on a tablet or you get up in the morning and you want to just quickly check and see, hey, do I have any pull requests that are awaiting my review or any other notifications that I need to be aware of? You can simply log in and do that on your phone. You don't have to fire up your laptop and everything. And you can find out more here at github.com/mobile. But one thing I do want to point out here is if we go into the Apple App Store and check out the entry for GitHub Mobile, you can see right here that it is #1 in developer tools with a 4.8 star rating. So we've seen tremendous adoption. We've got great feedback from the developers that are out there using this and everything. All right, so we've covered off on a number of features at a high level. You've seen there's links there. You can dive in and learn more and everything, and I'll provide some additional resources at the end. But let's jump into a bit of a demo and see how all of this works. So if I go over here so now this is my GitHub organization that I use for demo purposes. So yeah, and this is part of a larger enterprise, so you can set up a GitHub enterprise that has different organizations. So just theoretically speaking, if we were talking about an enterprise for Microsoft, you might see an organization out there for all the open source repositories with .NET and Visual Studio Code. You might see an organization out there for the Office team, an organization for the Xbox team. This is a way to manage different business units and things like that. Or for a smaller company, they may choose to have a single organization and just store all of their repos there. But yeah, you can have a mix of public repos and private repos. So, create your own open source projects, or, keep things private just for your own company's eyes and everything here. And the repo I'm going to be working out of today is Parts Unlimited. So when we look at Parts Unlimited here, common best practice inside of GitHub is to leverage markdown files, README files. You can put those in your root folder. You can put them in any folder, but the markdown will be rendered right here. So, I've got links out to my app service running on Azure and things like that. So, I can jump out here and take a look at that resource group, or take a look at, the activity going on here for that particular app service. Or I can, look at application insights, here and see, okay, let's look at all the telemetry, our reliability and usage and user engagement, and see if looks like we've had some failed requests. Maybe we want to dive into that, but, providing kind of this seamless integration here. But just to kind of set the stage here, this Parts Unlimited is a web app that's running on Azure. And the scenario is we purchased Parts Unlimited from Fabricam. We're actually Contoso. So we need to do some work here to go through and update our branding and everything on our pages and that. So we can leverage the boards and the projects here to, let's see, actually this project is at the organization level. Here we go. So I've got my Parts Unlimited project. This is using the new form of issues, the issues beta. So you can see we have what we labeled as a user story that says we need to update the reference to Contoso, and make note of the issue numbers here, 118, 134, 133, etc. And we've got different tasks that we've already completed here. So just a simple thing, but I could easily pivot this view to a table view, and I can see the different columns that we've added here. Yeah, I can add custom columns here, and I can leverage the labels and things here. So we could even, kind of group this by, let's say we want to group this by shirt size, or whatever. So we can slice and dice this data however we want, in various ways. And I can create and save different views and things like that. So yeah, we've got this work that we need to do. We want to update the subsidiary name to Contoso. So if I go back now to my repo for Parts Unlimited, there we go. As a developer, one of my own aha moments with GitHub and the security features and everything, as soon as I pushed this code to GitHub, it was a project that I had, forked from another repository. And originally I was using another source control tool, but I said, hey, I want to use GitHub and learn about all these features. As soon as I pushed this code to GitHub, Dependabot kicked in and said, hey, buddy, we found a security vulnerability in one of your dependencies. So right here, I can dive in and see what this alert is all about. And it's telling me, hey, there's this severity in Bootstrap, in the version of Bootstrap that you're using. And so you want to bump that version of Bootstrap. So here's, more information from the GitHub advisory database about this and everything. But not only does GitHub alert me to this issue, it also creates a pull request. So if I go in here and look at the files changed in this pull request, it's a pretty simple change. It's just going to bump the version of Bootstrap that it's pulling in up to 3.4.1. But based on the information that's in the GitHub advisory database, we know that that version is free of this particular security vulnerability. And now as a developer, I can go through and I can look that we've got branch protection rules set up so that whenever a pull request is created, targeted at our main branch, it's going to run GitHub Actions and go through our builds and our unit tests and things like that. So as long as I've got good code coverage with my unit tests and things, I can be assured that, hey, Dependabot changing something over here is not going to break something over here because I know I've got, good code coverage and everything. So then as a developer, I can say, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and merge that change that Dependabot is suggesting. So now I've already knocked off that security vulnerability. All right, so coming back to the repo and everything itself, here we go, get back up here to the main repo. Now I want to go through and make those changes for the branding changes and everything. Now, sure, I could clone this repository and work on that local version of the repository in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio or whatever, but I want to talk about Codespaces. When I go to spin up a new Codespace, I'm given some options here. I'm given options on what size of a virtual machine do I want to use here. Is this a heavy duty microservice with multiple things and I really need a lot of horsepower, or can I save some costs by leveraging a smaller machine, so to speak, and everything. And also we've updated this now so that as an organization, you can set policies to say which machines are available. You can control costs by saying, you know what, for the apps that we're building, we really don't need anything more than 8 cores, 16 gig of RAM, and things like that. So you can say that that 16 core, 32 gig machine size or machine type is not available for us, and things like that. All right, so I've already got a couple of Codespaces out there. So first I'm going to go to use the one that was related to my feature branch for updating the subsidiary name to Contoso. So launch that, spin that up. Even with new Codespaces, these are going to spin up in 10 to 20 seconds, something like that. But when I launch a Codespace for the first time, it's launching this virtual machine with a container. It is fetching and pulling the code for the branch that I was in into this Codespace. It's looking to see, am I just using the generic Codespace image, or do I have an image specified for my particular project that I want to use and all of that? But yeah, you can see this spun up, just how quickly this spun up. Now, this is an older .NET project, so I do really need to update the version of .NET that I'm using here, so that I can, get rid of some of those warnings and things. But here's our layout file, and here's where we've gone in and we've updated that heading for Contoso and everything. And when you're using, there's kind of two versions here. There's just a simple web editor that you can launch, but when you launch a full Codespace, you actually have the options to go in and set breakpoints and run things and do things like forward the port to your website. So now Pablo and I could collaborate. I can say, hey Pablo, here's that here's that URL for my running application that I'm debugging. Go check it out. Does this branding stuff look good to you? Or we could even launch a live share session. And even if he's using Visual Studio Code and I'm using this Codespace running in the browser, we can collaborate in ways like that. Now, a couple of other things here. Yeah, you've got all the Git features. So yes, I can commit my code changes. I can push and pull code changes. So if somebody else is making changes, I can pull those down and, debug my code with their changes in there as well. Oh boy, time's flying. Let me keep rolling on here. So this particular code space is just using the kitchen sink image. So, it has Node and Java and .NET and, all the things that you need. But if I close down this code space and come back over here and launch this other code space for my add Codespaces dev container, we'll see an example of how I can create a configuration file for my project to say, are we primarily using .NET? Are we primarily using Java? What Visual Studio Code extensions should we include in everything? So you can really make these specific. So in this case, here's my dev container JSON file. We're saying we're using .NET and Node, and I could provide other settings like connection strings for databases and things for debugging. I can specify what Visual Studio Code extension should always be loaded. So as a developer, we don't have to have some README file out there that says, hey, if you're going to be working on this project, here's the 3 extensions you need to rely on. We can codify that right here in this dev container JSON file and everything. So really personalize these things, or have consistent configurations across projects. And I can even go in here. It's saying sync settings is off right now. I can turn on sync settings. So if I like using the dark theme in Visual Studio Code, that dark theme will turn on here, or other settings that I may have in Visual Studio Code. So it can be consistent across everybody that's working on a project, and it can be personalized to each individual as well. All right, so let me go back to the repository here. So when I'm done making all of those code changes, I had a pull request out here for updating the subsidiary name to Contoso. And this is where, I would reference those issues. Or if I'm still using other planning and tracking tools like Jira or Azure Boards, in the case of Azure Boards, I can reference those Azure Boards work items and have direct links to them here as well. And this is where we can go in and do our code review. So maybe Pablo is reviewing the code here, and I'm acknowledging the code review, and we can see the code review was done for a couple of files that we changed. And I can go in and see all of my, let me go over to the Files Change tab, because there was a third file that changed. And this is where GitHub Advanced Security Code Scanning is right in my face as a developer. It's saying, hey, there's this missing cross-site request forgery token validation. I just clicked on the show more information, because as a developer, I don't exactly know what that means, but I can drill in and understand more about it. It's saying, hey, you need to add this validate anti-forgery token attribute. Right now, I only have this HTTP post attribute. So it gives me more information about that, and then shows me, what a generic example. Here's the bad code. Here's the good code with that additional attribute in there. So again, if this is code that was added as part of a new feature, I can fix this security vulnerability in my branch. So this is addressed, but even before my code goes to the main branch. So we've seen a couple of examples of the security showing up right in your developer workflow, but I can also go up to the organization level and look at the security tab here and see code scanning, Dependabot, security scanning alerts, across all of my repos and everything. So, the security team can come in and get kind of that overview of what's happening from a security perspective in the code. There's also the security tab at the repo level as well. So I can see my dependabot alerts, code scanning alerts specific to this repository. And this is also where you would go. So here's all of my code scanning alerts. Looks like I got a little work to do to really make this code secure. But this is where you would go to initially set up CodeQL. But something about GitHub Advanced Security, we built this out as a product and we built it out as a framework. So you can see the languages that we support here. Go and Ruby, we just added support last year. On the roadmap, we've got Kotlin and Swift. But if there's other security tools that you're used to using, or let's say you want to do security scans on your Terraform and other infrastructure as code files, you can plug in things like Prisma or Micro Focus Fortify or SNCC or other security tools, and have those results show up in the security overview and in the pull requests and things like that. So yeah, it's a framework as well as a product. All right, I want to leave a few minutes for questions in that, but I do want to show GitHub Actions as well. So yes, I have a typical Actions workflow for my CI/CD here. So, these changes have already been deployed to our dev environment and our QA environment, and the action specifically for Azure Web Apps gives me this nice little link so I can go out here and check my QA environment and see, yep, that says Contoso now. So there's a manual approval waiting for us to go to production. So I can say, QA looks good. Go ahead and deploy to production. Click the big green button, and that's going to launch the deployment to production and everything. So full CI/CD tool. But like I said, we've also, let me take one step back on the security piece. So if I go in here and look at my code scanning alerts and go back to that missing cross-site request forgery token validation, there's a nice little green button here that says create issue. So now I can create an issue for that security scanning issue. So you can see here's my user story and task. Here's that security issue. Now, if I go back and take a look at that project board, we'll see that security issue showing up right here on the project board. So with the security issue, I probably want to come in here and kind of reprioritize my work and say, we need to address that security issue before we finish off our feature work and stuff like that. So nice, tight integration there. And I also mentioned, I've used Azure boards in the past. So I can, let's see if I get back there. I've got an action that actually looks at issues, and there we go. If we look at this workflow file, the trigger here is when issues are edited, created, whatever. And I'm pulling in from the marketplace something that syncs over to Azure boards. So now if I'm still using Azure boards, I can see that security issue as a work item so that I can put that into my Kanban board in Azure boards and things like that. That's just one example of using workflows for a lot more than security. Okay, I think I've covered off everything I wanted to cover. So, okay, so take a look at some of the questions here, but actually I'm going to skip over this section in the interest of time. There's additional resources here, lots of great sessions from GitHub Universe. Please go check those out. Everything you need is in the GitHub documentation, so docs.github.com. Great place to jump in and get started. You'll see lots of starter workflows and things like that. Or go to lab.github.com. There's hands-on labs that'll walk you through how to use CodeQL, how to use GitHub Actions, GitHub Fundamentals, all of that. And you can do that just with free open repos, but you get that hands-on experience. There's a lot of work going on here at GitHub. So you can see the things that we're working on and planning to deliver across Codespaces, Actions, really everything, over the next quarters. GitHub.blog is where we make all of our product announcements and talk about how we participate in various security summits and things like that. We were actually, our chief security officer was at the White House, participated in a White House security summit not long ago. That was documented at the blog. We have all of our release notes at our change log, so you can see, keep on top of all the changes we've made and everything. And then also provide feedback through GitHub discussions is something that we added. But if you go to our feedback page, you can suggest new features, see if others have suggested those features. You can vote on things that others have suggested. You can see what questions that are out there and see how those questions have been answered and things like that. All right, I got all that covered off. Now let's pull up. Let's see what we've got out here for Q&A. Pablo, any particular questions I should address here first?
Hey, Dave. Yes, let me read some questions. So what upcoming GitHub feature excites you the most?
Actually, I thought I had that. So Copilot. Copilot is your AI assisted paired programmer with, while I'm talking, I'm going to try to get a slide pulled up about that, but it's in a different deck. So with all that open source code that's available on GitHub, all the public repositories that are out there, we're able to, kind of go over all of those repos, but also look at just things that are out there on the internet in Wikipedia and other sources and things like that. That allows us to, you open up comments in your code and say, hey, I'm going to create a function that does this or that, and then turn on Copilot. Copilot will suggest a block of code for you, and it'll give you, multiple. Here we go. Here's the slide I want. It'll give you multiple suggestions for that code as well. This is in private preview right now, but we've seen things like in some repos where Copilot is being used. We're seeing as much as 30% of the code that's in those repos is actually coming from Copilot suggestions in things like that. So
that's
GitHub.
Go.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, with GitHub having, the 73 million users and being the home of open source and all that code being out there. But again, like I said, it's not just looking at the code that's out there. I think this is something very unique to Copilot, or unique to GitHub, that enables us to build something like Copilot.
That's amazing. That's sounds great for people that are learning to code like me and experts like you. I'm sure it does coding much more faster and enjoyable. So perfect. Let me read the next question from our users. Code scanning feature is amazing. Any story on what the code scanning feature saved you from mistakenly publishing?
Well, one of the things, I'll pull up another slide from this deck that talks about code scanning. And, it helps me leverage the work of security researchers from some of the largest global enterprises. So like I said, by default, it focuses in on some very high priority vulnerabilities and things like that. But there's a couple thousand queries out there that you can run. A lot of those were created by GitHub's team of security researchers in that. But CodeQL is open source. So there's security researchers from Microsoft, Google, Uber, and other companies that write queries for CodeQL. And when I click on that link, it takes me to a GitHub Universe session where Josh Brown-White, the principal security lead from Microsoft, talks about how Microsoft security experts wrote CodeQL queries to help hunt for SolaraGate. That was big in the news last year.
Wow.
There's also things that we've done for Log4j and things like that. So it's really helped me know that my code is free from these well-known, even in the mainstream news, vulnerabilities and things like that. But it's leveraging, like I say, it's leveraging the work of those security researchers from across the globe, not just from my company, not just from GitHub.
Amazing. That's outsourcing the standing and shoulders of giants. Love that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Let's go to a next question. So in Azure boards, if I publish a project, do the boards get updated automatically or do I have to do so manually?
All right. So let me get back to the window. Here we go. Here's my, no, that's not my demo window. Let me get back. Where's my, here we go. So coming back here, so yes, I've got this integrated with Azure DevOps in such a way that I even put a status badge in here for my Azure boards and things like that. So if I go over to Azure boards and look at the user story and tasks that I had for this, we can see that as I was creating my pull requests and things like that, just by referencing the Azure DevOps work items and things, it created this deep link between Azure boards and GitHub. So now I can go back and forth with GitHub and Azure DevOps, between the code and the work and everything. And going back to the security feature there, that also then enables me, if I go over to my dashboard, now, since I synced that security issue over to Azure boards, I've created custom work item types to track these security issues. So I can see those, right here. Here's that fixed missing cross-site request forgery token thingy. But yeah, I can surface those here.
That's
I
amazing.
can have those show up as charts and things here. I've got rules on my Kanban board that say, hey, if there's something tagged with a security issue, so those labels in GitHub carry over to my tags in Azure DevOps, I've got rules to make that card red. And, maybe now I say, yeah, we want to reprioritize our work and fix that security issue before we complete our feature work and everything. So nice tight integration.
That's amazing, Dave. Look, with a few seconds to go, I would like to thank you again for sharing this knowledge with all of us. Thank the audience for tuning in, and we'll send a follow-up email with Dave's presentation, a follow-up on the upcoming SaaS Academy webinars, and forums form to hear your feedback on how the event went and what you would like us to cover in the future. So thanks so much, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure, and I hope to see you again at future academies.
Absolutely. Bye. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon, great evening.